All right. Hey, everybody. This is Elizabeth Wolf of Elizabeth Wolf Astrology, and I have a really special guest with me today, Kelly Surtees, and she is one of my mentors and one of the astrologers that I have followed for a little bit now, and she's joining us today to talk about the sign of Pisces. So, Kelly, thank you for being here today. Would you introduce yourself?
Thanks so much for having me, Elizabeth. Yeah, my name's Kelly. I am a Pisces. I'm also an astrologer. It's been really what I've done most of my adult life. So I was drawn to astrology at a very young age, but I found a real love and passion for sharing astrology. So helping people learn astrology and learn about themselves through astrology. So a lot of what I do these days is teach and consult with students and clients, mostly online, which I was kind of doing before the new reality, but obviously that's a good fit for where we are now.
Yes, absolutely. And can you tell our viewers how long you have been studying and practicing and teaching astrology?
Sure, yeah, a really long time. It's going to make me sound a little old. I first started seeing clients, I think, back in 2002 or 2003. So not quite 20 years, but certainly quite a long time. So I did a few other things after graduating high school, but I fell into alternative healing pretty early. And that's been, what I've done for about 17 years now.
Wow, that's incredible. And clearly you still love it.
I do. I drank the Kool-Aid really early on and just I remember learning about astrology when I was a child, and not because I grew up in a particularly mystical family. I'm from more of a traditional religious family background, but I was just very drawn to everything kind of spiritual and esoteric. I mean, very cliche Pisces, I guess. And so as soon as I could get more astrology, I did. And probably it was only a few years after I started seeing clients that I was offering just some private tutoring in small groups. So I did start teaching pretty early on. Not because I thought I knew everything at that point. I still don't think I do. I'm still learning and studying with my mentors and teachers, but because I knew that what I knew could help other people. And I just wanted to share, if you like, the good word of astrology, because I know how much of a positive impact it's had on my life. And I just feel like the more people that know about astrology, the better for everyone.
Yes, very well put. And it's like you said, it's once you drink the Kool-Aid, you're down the rabbit hole, and it's there's no getting out.
There's no getting out. And those first few years just go by in a blur because you're just like soaking all the mythology and the philosophy and the magic in. And yeah, it's wonderful. It's a wonderful pathway, a wonderful calling, a wonderful path to be on.
Yes, yep, I totally agree. So the first question that I wanted to ask you about in terms of Pisces is, it's kind of a twofold, which is, what is maybe one of your favorite things about having your sun in Pisces, or ways in which you identify most with the sign?
There's so many ways. I love the fluidity of being a Pisces. I like the kind of flexible nature. I like being able to just kind of get in a groove and go with it. I'm not saying everyone around me likes that that's how I go about life, but it's something that I really like about being a Pisces. You know, it takes me, like today, for instance, it took me a little while to get going. I didn't feel great when I woke up this morning, Monday morning here where I am in Europe. And so I just took it a little slower. You know, I kind of took a long shower and did some baking, which I know is a really weird thing to do at 8:30 Monday morning. But after I just had a little bit of feeling time, I sat at my desk and I've just had such a productive day. So for me, I love the ebb and flow of the watery kind of, you've got to feel the feelings before you can kind of get into the flow and be productive. There was a second part to your question, but I got so excited about talking about the flow that I can't remember it. Sorry.
That's okay. Just maybe a way in which you really identify with the sign, where people might be aware, and you're like, yes, I absolutely do that.
Totally. I mean, my husband would say there's definitely kind of flaky, vague parts about me. But I've also had those moments, Pisces is a sign I think that's often portrayed as being quite intuitive or maybe a little bit psychic. And, I don't necessarily make those claims, but I do have experiences where I'll message someone about a particular topic and they'll be like, oh my God, that thing is actually happening today. Or I was just about to reach out to you to get some information about that topic. So I do fairly frequently, I guess, have those little moments of, I guess, intuition or that kind of weird synchronicity or just being in the energetic place where someone else is and acting on that. And I think that's probably one of the things I love about being a Pisces is that maybe there's a little bit more access to that intuitive material, and having had that awareness for such a long time, I'm very willing to act on that, not in a crazy reckless way, but in a like reaching out, offering, is this something that is going on for you or for whoever, so that it kind of helps guide what I do. So it's not all like data and facts and budgets, basically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's kind of a flow to life, like you were saying. And I think Pisces is very in tune with that and can easily just surrender to that flow more so than other signs, perhaps.
Yeah, I think there are, it's the most flexible of all the water signs. There are definitely other signs that get into the same zone that Pisces does. My water sign cousins, if you like Scorpio and Cancer, but they just respond differently. And while the meandering style of Pisces definitely has its downside, that ability to kind of adapt on the fly is something that's great about Pisces, I think.
Yes. Yeah, that's really nice. Okay. And so the next question is, what are some common misconceptions, let's say, about the sign of
Yes.
Pisces without
So
getting too
I did
negative?
yeah, totally. I did make some notes about this because I was like, well, people say they're flaky and they're unreliable. I'm like, I don't know if that's a misconception, because I think that there is an element of truth to that, to the sign of Pisces, that there is the otherworldly piece creates a little bit of an ungrounded quality in the here and now. And one of the things that my family and my husband often associates with that for me is that if I'm pouring a glass of water, I will always spill some on the counter or on the bench. It's like I'm just programmed to miss the edge. Even if I'm watching and following, I will overpour or mispour. Not that I spill the whole thing on the counter, but I will spill something. And, my stepkids, when they were growing up, they're like, is this some random act of cleanliness where you've just, there's water everywhere? So there's just a sense of like the boundaries are very permeable. And I guess the misconception, because I was like, what is the misconception here? The misconception, I think, is that because of the dreaminess and because of the flakiness and because of some of that vagueness, that Pisces can't be productive. That's the misconception, I think. And I think that whether the productiveness comes from the person being a Pisces, or whether it comes from, say, you've got a planet elsewhere in your chart that's maybe more grounded or more hardworking, just by being a Pisces or having a planet in Pisces, that in and of itself won't make you not productive, basically. There are people who have no planets in Pisces but might have a really strong Neptune placement, or, might have, say, a balsamic moon placement in their chart. There's a couple of other things that can also make people flaky or tired or a bit unreliable that have nothing to do with Pisces. So I think those qualities sometimes get put on Pisces, but they can, there are other planetary placements that can be responsible for that too, if that makes sense. And yeah, just by being, I know some Pisces, it's represented by the fish swimming in different directions, and that idea that some Pisces are kind of rising up and some are kind of falling down. And I think that's really true. And at different points, in your life, if you do have planets in Pisces or have a lot of Pisces, you may connect with like the downfalling fish, where you're like just in a bit of a lull. And at other points, you might be like the upward rising fish. So yeah, I think the big misconception is that because of that sensitivity and that sort of go with the flowiness, that they can't also be productive, because some Pisces I know are incredibly hardworking, incredibly responsible. I'm not saying they have great boundaries, but they still get a lot done.
There's another misconception that might have some truth.
Yes. I mean, I do think Pisces, there is there's definitely a struggles with boundaries component. When that's directed towards something productive like work, that can actually manifest as someone who's really prolific, for instance. Susan Miller is another very well-known astrologer who is a Pisces. She writes, her own horoscope column and things like that, a sun sign style astrologer, and she's incredibly prolific. But she might, I'm not saying she is, but being prolific in one area of your life would usually make you quite disorganized elsewhere.
Yes. Yeah. No, I love that beautiful symbolism that you mentioned of the two fish, and one swimming upstream and the other one more falling away. And I think that'll be really interesting to some people, because I know some of the symbols for the signs, some are really obvious and match with the traits, and some, maybe like Pisces, aren't so obvious. And you think, okay, well, there's two fish, I get the water sign aspect, but what else could that symbolize, or what else could that mean? So I really like your take on that. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
I was actually also going to ask you, it's not so much a misconception. I think the Pisces people in my life for sure have an element of creativity and an artist spirit about them. Do you find any of that resonates for you?
Absolutely. I once joked that my version of doing a budget was creating a vision board. And it wasn't really a joke, it was true. I had to do a budget at one point in my 20s when I was starting my business, and I had a credit card debt that I wanted to pay off. And I was trying to do it in a spreadsheet with Excel, and I struggled. So I got a bunch of colored markers and a big piece of Bristol board, and I was so happy to do that in more of a colorful, creative kind of way. So, I mean, personally, that's just one example, but my whole day is more of a creative sort of style of day. And I think that comes from, when we learn about the zodiac signs, particularly in traditional astrology, one of the ways we do that is by learning which planets are really strengthened by being in that sign. And one thing that I've always loved about Pisces is that it is the sign where both the benefic planets, Venus and Jupiter, have some great strength or dignity. So, in traditional astrology, Pisces is ruled by Jupiter, the greater benefic, and Venus, the lesser benefic, but still the benefic, is exalted in Pisces. And that's sort of a long-winded way of answering your question about the artistry and the creativity of Pisces. It is like the third sign that Venus has great strength in. Venus rules Taurus and Libra, but Venus is also, raised up or held on high in Pisces. And you do see, maybe they don't have the sun in Pisces, but artists might have Venus in Pisces or Mercury in Pisces, particularly if they're a poet or a writer of some kind. So Pisces will show up a lot in that artistry, creative mode for sure.
Yes, and that's something that I really, really love about the sign personally. I'm lucky enough to have my Jupiter in Pisces.
That's way better than having the sun in Pisces, if you ask me.
I don't know, because mine's in the 8th house.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? This is one point that I'm so glad we're touching on, is that it's not just about the planet you have in the sign, but it's where it is in the chart and how that kind of, enhances or detracts from the expression of the planet. So I can see how having Jupiter in Pisces in the 8th might be something that you have a little bit of, caution around occasionally.
Yes. Yep. But it's one of my only water placements, and I love it. It's one of my favorite, actually.
Yeah, it should be on the list of favorites, I think.
Yes. It's one of my favorite placements. So, and are you comfortable talking about where Pisces is in your chart?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've said before that I do also have a Pisces ascendant, so it's right in the first house part of my chart. So that probably makes me like a Pisces born at sunrise is going to be someone who has like a double dose of that, if you like. And I mean, anyone, if you're a Scorpio and you're born at sunrise, or you're a Gemini and you're born at sunrise, if you're born at sunrise, you have the sun very close to your ascendant, and they'll be in the same sign. So yeah. So it
Yeah.
just makes me like even more Piscean, I think.
Yes, I love that. I love that. And
Yeah.
that I think that shows in such a prolific and great way in your work too, at least as far as I've noticed in your teaching style, in your writing style, and just how you approach consults with clients and everything. Your Pisces nature really comes out, and I think having that compassion in your work just amplifies that and brings a lot of heart to that. So I wanted to let my my audience know about that. I've been lucky enough to have a reading with Kelly, and read her blogs and take workshops from her, and the creative, compassionate Pisces really does come out in pretty much everything in the public that she puts
Thank
out
you.
there.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think that's one great thing about Pisces is that, it's willing to get in there and feel with you. And I think that the Venus-Jupiter combination in Pisces has a real sense of acceptance, like all kinds of feelings are part of the human experience. And if I want to share the joy with you, I'm going to equally be willing to share the sadness or the grief or the pain. And there's something in that Venus-Jupiter Pisces piece about like loving all the feelings, or being willing to explore the breadth of human emotion, if you like.
Yeah, which is really great. That's a wonderful quality. I think that does not get enough attention for the
Yeah.
sign.
Yeah, I think it's really something. Look, the other water signs definitely bring the feeling, but they're coming at it like Cancer's ruled by the moon, so there's a bit of a different tone there. Scorpio's ruled by Mars in traditional astrology, so there's like a totally different tone to the emotions that come up in Scorpio. And,
Yes.
there is a place for that too. So, yeah, just representing that breadth, if you like. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm very happy being a Pisces. I've never wished it away or anything like that. I know some people, when they come to astrology, they're like, oh, I wish I didn't have this bit or that bit. And I don't know. I guess that's also the Jupiter piece, is that, it's a big adventure to kind of explore how it's bringing experiences or meaning, or a sense of like the curiosity of what will I do with this, if you like.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, that's beautifully said. I'm wondering actually if you could, since I know a lot of my readers and my audience, you have a very more traditional take, and you use, the traditional ruler for most signs. Can you talk a little bit about Pisces and maybe the dual rulership, or why you use Jupiter as opposed to maybe the more modern Neptune?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great distinction. I'm glad we can clarify that, because I know some people will be thinking, what is this astrologer lady? She thinks that Jupiter rules Pisces. She's got something wrong in her system. Yeah. So in ancient astrology, there was a teaching chart known as the Thema Mundi, which was described as the symbolic birth chart of the world. And there is a methodology by which the planets are connected to the signs that they rule. And very simply, it starts with the two brightest signs in the Northern Hemisphere, which are Cancer and Leo, are given the two brightest lights in the sky, the sun and moon. So the moon ruling Cancer, the sun ruling Leo, and they each get blessed with ruling one sign at a bright time of year. And then in this diagram, we fan out around the zodiac, and all the planets are placed in signs according to their proximity to Earth, basically, and their speed of motion. So the sign around from Cancer is Gemini, and the sign around from Leo is Virgo. They're both ruled by Mercury. And if you scooch around one more sign, you end up in Taurus and Libra, and they're ruled by Venus. And if you scooch around one more, you're in Aries and Scorpio, which are ruled by Mars. And then we make our next scooch around and we get to Pisces and Sag. And the next planet is Jupiter, So Jupiter rules those two signs. And then the final two signs, of course, Capricorn and Aquarius, they're ruled by the furthest out, the last visible planet, which is Saturn. So that's the kind of framework, the philosophical framework about why the visible planets rule the signs that they do. That this diagram, the Thema Mundi chart, has the sign rulerships in it. It has the aspect patterns in it. It has the joys and the exaltations of the planets. It's got so much rich material in it. But yeah, that's why. And so the modern planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, I do use them in my chart work. You'll hear me talk about in client work and in student work. I'll be like, we've got, Sun square Pluto, or Venus conjunct Uranus, or Moon opposite Neptune. So I use the modern planets as aspecting bodies and as transiting planets, but I don't use them as sign rulers. So I don't interrupt that beautiful symmetrical pattern that the ancient Greeks were so proud of kind of constructing and formulating. I'll honor that, and then, rather than break the pattern. So I definitely love to have Neptune in my chart. There's some chart work that you couldn't do without Neptune in the chart, but I just don't put it on the same level as the visible planets. Yeah. Is there more I should say on that? Is that kind of clear?
No, that's wonderful. And I actually learned a lot just from that little bit, because I'm still also learning, and different astrologers use the planets kind of in different ways. And but yeah, so for you, since you're a Pisces and you have kind of a lot of Pisces in your chart, you then look to Jupiter as your ruling planet.
Yes. Yeah. And I recommend that people do check this out. If you think about it, there are 12 different types of Pisces depending on where Jupiter is. So you could be a Pisces that has Jupiter in Aries, and that's going to be more of an independent, maybe highly active, energetic type of Pisces. You could have a Pisces that has Jupiter in Gemini, and that's going to be a much more chatty or conversational, or even outgoing type of Pisces. You might have a Pisces who's got Jupiter in Scorpio, and that's going to be a Pisces who's feeling all the deep feelings. They're going to be even more sensitive than your typical Pisces, and they're going to have a depth that a typical Pisces won't have. So then you could imagine maybe a Pisces that has Jupiter in Capricorn. That's going to be a Pisces that's a little bit more grounded, maybe does wear a business suit during the day, and they'll get that from the rulership of Jupiter in Capricorn. Yeah, so I would look to Jupiter in my chart, and I would definitely say for other Pisces listening, check out and see where Jupiter is. Now, the other reason that I do it that way for chart work is that Jupiter moves more quickly, and he's going to change signs about every 12 months. If we're looking to Neptune, we're going to have Neptune in the same sign for about 14 years, which would mean every Pisces born in the entire 70s decade, and then some, would all have Neptune in Sagittarius. So we're all the same iteration. But, every year or so we got Jupiter in a different sign. So we get more nuances and more of an individualized, unique take on the chart when we use the traditional rulers.
I love that. And that it makes the person in their chart, like you said, more individualized and more unique, and even I think more interesting to dig into, rather than just
much more.
Yeah, like a whole decade of people who have the same. Yeah, no, I love that. Thank you for explaining.
Oh, my pleasure. Yeah, because I one of the things that I had before I had astrology is a great interest in people. Why are you the way you are? How did you get that way? Where does that come from? And I've studied counseling, and I understand some of the psychological influences around like nature versus nurture. But I'm always very curious about what is the essence inside you? Why did you react the way you did in the situations that you were in? And if you've got siblings and you all grew up in the same house, but you've all turned out to be such different people because the essence inside of each of you is so different. And so what I find helps me figure out what's unique about each being is more of these nuanced approaches. So yeah, I get a bit excited when I talk about how astrology helps us understand ourselves.
Yeah, no, you're not excited at all. It's really
no, very flat, no energy here.
Yep, no interest, no passion, nothing.
Can't imagine doing this all day, every day.
That's the goal. That is the goal.
Yeah.
So my last kind of official question here for you is, what would you like people who don't know a lot about Pisces, or who only maybe read the kind of surface level stuff about them, what would you like people to know about the sign?
I think that there's probably a lot more going on inside than you give them credit for, that they'll be more reflecting and feeling, and they'll be more understanding of the nuances. One thing I think Pisces does very well that doesn't get a lot of attention is their ability to be aware of like the spider web like links and threads that does connect, you know, past and present and future, or connects you and me. There is an awareness of that kind of subtle sensory realm, if you like. If we think about the 5 kind of major senses, but then all the subtle senses to do with instinct and intuition and felt sense, Pisces is expert in that territory. And so when you try to judge a Pisces by very practical or very tangible criteria, you're almost using the wrong tool to assess the creature in front of you. And they will probably come up short, and you might say, look, they didn't show up on time or what have you, and fair enough. And if you're looking for someone to always meet your deadline, a person with a lot of planets in Pisces might not be the best choice. But if you're looking for that awareness and that nuance and that insight, it's very hard to train in people, but it's something that planets in Pisces do innately and instinctively. So it's just might be a matter of drawing that out, I think.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
That's very well explained. And I was curious to see what you were going to say. I love it.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Sometimes I never know until I'm saying it. No, but there's such a felt quality to Pisces that it's aware of things. And I think some Pisces really struggle with that, because if you've not taken time to get quiet or to develop a way of interacting with that subtle sensory feeling part of you, it's quite overwhelming when it shows up. And that's where you can see the cliches of Pisces that maybe drink too much or smoke a little too much something or watching too much TV, and that escapism behavior. Whenever I hear that about a Pisces, my heart goes out to that person, because I'm like, they're in massive kind of psychic, energetic, emotional overwhelm, and they haven't yet learned the skills on how to cleanse and ground and handle that. And that those things can be taught. But yeah.
Yeah. Do you find that is something that you have had to adapt or change at all as you have lived your life? Do you still at the end of the day need to have a period where you just have to kind of come down and disconnect from, because I'm sure that you are like a sponge and just everything gets in through the day?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a sense, I mean, Pisces is kind of associated with this idea of sensitizing or being sensitized, which means you're going to absorb a lot more. I had this flash the other day where I was like, because my husband's at home we're on that sort of isolation, working from home type thing. And I'm like sharing my space with someone a lot. I'm like, this isn't what I normally do. So, being alone is definitely something that helps for me. Baths, reading, even sometimes because my work is very wordy. There's a lot of writing and talking and teaching that goes on. And sometimes at the end of the day, it's not so much that I'm overwhelmed, or that can be part of it, but it's like I've got no words left and I can't even watch TV because there's words, and I'll sit down and do a jigsaw puzzle or play a strategy game or something like that. So it's learning about how to change focus or change energetic interaction so that I'm not doing more of the same, even though it looks like relaxing. But 2 of my best tips for Pisces that need to ground or get anchored or centered are water and music. And water, hydration is really important. So making sure you actually drink enough water, but being in the water. So getting in the ocean is the best, but not always available and not always the right time of year. Getting in a bath is like the second best option. And the third best is just jumping in a long shower. The water on the skin just reminds you, oh, I've got a physical outline, and it kind of pulls you back in. It's also quite calming to the central nervous system. So it just does ground you. And the music is the other option. So playing music, I think that really speaks to the Venus exaltation in Pisces around using music to move your mood or to help you shift feelings or energy that might be stuck inside you. Whether that's dance it out or put on Adele and cry it out. I mean, either end of the spectrum will work, just depending on where your mood is at that day.
Yes. No, thank you so much for those tips. I think those would be really helpful, like you said, to kind of pull your energy back to center and maybe get your energetic things that aren't yours that maybe you've
it's like
acquired.
You have to sift through at the end of the day. Like that's actually not my shit. That was that person that was crying in my office earlier today that my heart broke with them, but I just want to leave that there.
Yes. Yep. And recognizing what is yours and what's someone else's, and those boundaries again. Yeah. Like I said, my Jupiter is in Pisces, and it is exactly by degree sextile my sun. And so
you're like an honorary Pisces.
Well, thank you. I was not thinking of it that way, but I will take it.
Yeah.
I definitely feel sometimes like a Pisces, like my interaction, even being around water. I live in Minnesota, where we have so many lakes. We are the land of lakes. I live about 4 blocks from a lake. Which I love. And I mean, it's cold, probably about
most
4
of
to 5 months of the year. Yeah.
I lived in Ontario for a long time. It's not a warm place, those lake places.
No, so but it's even just being around water and is very healing. And music also that's one thing I have to have as part of my everyday is whether I'm singing or whether I'm just listening to music, it's got to be an everyday thing.
Yeah, music does something that kind of circumvents the analytical thinking brain, and it goes straight to where you need it. So yeah, I think it's very good for Pisces planets.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you a big music lover yourself?
Yeah, my husband is much more of he's a musician, so he loves music. I love it when I remember to put it on, but I'm usually more of a like jump in the bath kind of girl. But when the music's on, I'm always like, I have to do this more often. It's one of those things where I always forget to take that piece of my own tips, but you know, we're all doing the best we can.
Yes, exactly. So tell us a little bit about what you're working on right now and where people can find you if they want to know more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm doing a few things at the moment. In typical Pisces fashion, one big adventure and project is never enough. I'm working on my first book, which will be on secondary progressions, and we hope to have it out later this year, but we shall see if that comes together. But we are progressing through it, which is great. I'm also in the middle of teaching a 4-part online class on the power of the planets. So it's all about discovering the 10 planets in astrology and seeing how to work with them in a birth chart. Now, I think by the time this airs, the first class has probably happened, but you can catch up. It's all, we'll be teaching the classes live on a Monday, but all the materials are accessible. So if you join a little bit late, you can catch up. So that's going on. And then I always have my monthly subscription, which gives you info around every aspect that's happening each month. There's a series of videos that you get access to as a subscriber and a couple of PDF handouts just to give you all the astro insights to help you time your life with astrology. So that's my monthly astrology guide membership. So that's always available as well. And you can find out more about all of that on my website, which is kellysastrology.com.
Perfect. And Kelly, I'm going to backtrack a little bit to your planets course, just because I'm curious, and I've had some other people ask as well. Is the course more for beginners, like the kind of the basics of the planets? Is it more intermediate based?
It is more for beginners. Yeah. So I started. I'm presenting my beginner training and then my chart interpretation series. That's my teaching commitment for 2020 is to teach those classes live. So I've just finished my intro 6-week course, and those students, of course, are now flowing into the planet training. So it is more of a beginner program. So if you are someone who's maybe already working with astrology, this course might not be the best one for you. If you're looking for more intermediate level training, I do have many courses at the intermediate and advanced level on my website that will take you into different areas about chart interpretation aspects, specialized topics like career or relationships, as well as bringing some of those traditional chart interpretation tips in. But for people who are just getting into astrology or thinking, I want to get more, I'll be teaching about the 10 planets. We'll learn about the traditional planets with those traditional extras. And in addition to learning the keywords of the planets, I'll also be showing students some of the basic approaches about how we interpret the planets in the chart. So based on the house they might be placed in or the house that they're ruling. So it's really taking those first steps to some basic chart interpretation skills.
Awesome. And you said that's every Monday for 4 weeks?
Yeah, the first class will be happening live on April 13 and it'll run for 4 weeks from then. So even if you're hearing this a little bit after the fact, you can certainly jump in and join us. And that's the first module, and there will be an aspects module to follow. And after that, there is a moon phases plus a few extras in that chart interpretation module. So there'll be a series of classes to take students through. So if you are a little bit beginner, you could start and join us for the next few months and build your skills at reading a birth chart.
Perfect. And I'm so glad you offer something like that and really kind of start with those, more fundamental levels for people, and then they can build on it. Like you said, if they drink the Kool-Aid, they're going to want more. So you got to have more ready.
Absolutely. I mean, and I do believe that, you can always learn something. I always have, every time I run these courses, I have some of my more advanced students thinking, I just want to brush up on planets, or I want to review that material. And of course, you will always learn more. But I think it's really important that when students are learning, just to step them through it. It's very easy these days with so much material online to just try and jump in too soon. You're in the deep end and you don't know how to doggy paddle yet, or you're trying to run, but you haven't mastered walking. So we will go through in that sort of structured order so that it's easier for students to build on what they know and not get overwhelmed and then walk away, because I don't want that. I want as many people to come into astrology and stay into astrology so that there's more people sharing astrology.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a really nice way, like you said, to help people start walking with it before they run. Because there is a lot. It's very multi-layered, which is wonderful, but especially with, our all of the information we have access to now, not just with books and teachers online, it's easy, I think, to get just overwhelmed and inundated with information.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's easy to feel like you might know things because you've heard a class or you've watched a podcast on something. It's very different when you're in a class setting where you are given some weekly exercises to apply the knowledge. That's where you actually get to practice it. Learning isn't just listening, learning is doing. And so one of the things that I'm always encouraging my students, that's one of the reasons they get homework exercises each week, but I'm also encouraging them to talk to other people about astrology, test out what you know. I'm not saying pretend you're an astrologer when you're not, but letting people know that you're in training or that you want to try something out. You do have to use what you know for it actually to grow and become something really rich and meaningful.
Yes, I love that. And I think that is the perfect sentiment to end on today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Elizabeth.
Of course, Kelly. And like I said, you can find her, or like Kelly said, you can find her online at kellysastrology.com and go check out. She has not only her website, she has courses, she has a book she's working on, she's on several podcasts. So Kelly is very accessible, and I think one of the best astrologers and teachers out there. Not biased at all.
That's very kind. Thank you.
Of course. Well, thank you guys so much, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.